Shalom and welcome to the One Pasuk podcast, in which three rabbis from Englewood, New Jersey, each share an insight on one particular pasuk from the Parsha and reflect on each other's ideas. This week we'll feature our once-a-month episode on relationships in the Parsha with my better half, my wife Shoshana, a teacher and school administrator for 20 years, who transitioned her career to become a social worker specializing in couples and individual therapy, all while serving as a dedicated rebbitzin. Next week, we'll return to our regularly scheduled programming with your favorite rabbinic banter with Rabbi Akiva Block of Kehilat Kesher and Rabbi Daniel Goldberg of Eitz Chaim, the Englewood Shtivel. Our one pasuk for this week, Parshas Vayechi, the final Parsha in Sefer Bereshis, comes from chapter 48, verse 13. Vayishlach Yisrael es yamino, vayoshes al rosh Ephraim, v'hu hatza'ir, v'es smolo al rosh Menashe, sikel es yadav ki Menashe habachor. Yisrael, Yaakov, stretches out his right hand, the more prominent hand, and he places it on the head of Yosef's son Ephraim, the younger. And his left hand, the less prominent hand, he puts over the head of Menashe, the older child. Sikel es yadav. He switches his hands in a famous scene where Yaakov summons before him Yosef and his two sons to give them brachos. And this dramatic scene is such fertile ground in trying to understand first the destiny of the Jewish people and what Yaakov intends in switching his arms between Ephraim and Menashe, as well as the dynamics between the brothers, between Ephraim and Menashe, that we imagine would be affected by such a demonstrative act. Yosef calls out and tries to correct Yaakov, but Yaakov is intentional. He knows what he's doing. And in light of everything that's gone on between the brothers in the past, it only makes this moment more dramatic and begs for more explanation. So, Shoshana, what do you think?
I agree completely. This scene is mind-boggling in light of everything that's transpired between Yosef and his brothers. And I'd like to unpack a question raised by the Netziv, who asks a very obvious and straightforward question, which is why Yaakov created such a dramatic scene. If he wanted to put his right hand over Menashe and his left hand over Ephraim, why didn't he just change their position? Just move one to the right and the other to the left, instead of creating this dramatic scene of crisscrossing his arms. And so the Netziv explains that what Yaakov was trying to do was something incredibly nuanced. On the one hand, he wanted to maintain the status of these boys. Menashe was the older, and he should stand in that place reflective of his status, and Ephraim the younger should stand in his place reflective of his status. And at the very same time, he wanted to, with his brachot, elevate the younger and give a secondary bracha to the older. I wouldn't call it a diminishment, but it was definitely different and intentional. And to be able to maintain both of those stances, he left them standing where they were and crisscrossed his arms as a means to be able to uphold both of those aspects. I think this scene is such a profound visualization of the tension that's at the core of every relationship. And we're here to talk about relationships. That's our theme. In every relationship, there's an inherent tension. On the one hand, you have two individual people, each of whom wants to be authentically themselves. Each wants and really needs the freedom, a certain amount at least, and a certain amount of independence to be who they truly are. While we want to feel inherently ourselves, at the same time, we want to feel deeply connected to the other. And we want to do that knowing that there are differences between us. So there's this inherent tension in every single relationship. This tension between individuality versus togetherness or connectedness. And of course, the more the relationship means to you, the higher are the stakes to maintain both of those aspects. And the way that Yaakov went about this highlighted a certain tension that the boys must have felt. Ephraim and Manasseh must have felt it. I think we can even call it a certain conflict between them. And conflict is actually the only place that allows us to work through this tension. And I think that Yaakov was very mindfully and skillfully setting this up. I think that had he not done so, Ephraim and Manasseh would not have had, and I mean this, an opportunity to work through a tension that perhaps Yosef and his brothers never had the opportunity to work through. They were being asked to work through this conflict right there, to think about what it means to stand in your place, but also to receive brachot that may not be reflective of your place. By crossing his arms, Yaakov was teaching Ephraim and Manasseh how to confront conflict directly and what to learn from it, how to learn from it, what they would gain from it. Because conflict is the only means by which we get to navigate and really deepen both our sense of individuality and our sense of connectedness. It's only through conflict. If we try to go around that conflict or avoid it, we will miss the opportunity to deepen ourselves as an individual and deepen authentic connection.
And it's not that we're looking for moments of conflict. Conflict is inevitable. It's just part of our humanity. We're all different, and we all have different skills and different values and different responsibilities. And so conflict differences is something we encounter throughout our day, especially in close relationships. And so what you're saying, if I understand correctly, is that Yaakov is trying to spell out or demonstrate for Ephraim and Manasseh how to confront those conflicts head on, directly, openly, in a healthy way.
Exactly. Meaning we don't look for conflict. It's impossible not to have those conflicts in close, deep relationships. It's inherent to the relationship. So we're not looking for it, but when those conflicts arise, we don't want to circumvent around them. We don't want to self-negate by always giving in. And we don't want to constantly assert ourselves as an individual because then we lose our deep connection. What has to happen is a lot of self-confrontation. That's the first step. Self-confrontation is what is really the core of me? What's getting triggered here? What's pushing my buttons? And when I can really look at that clearly, which takes a lot of work, it's looking at my shortcomings, looking at my vulnerabilities, looking at what I'm willing to negotiate and give up on because it's not a part of my core self. From that place, I can authentically then compromise and connect in a deep way.
And I'm sure when you use the word conflict, you don't mean like a fight, meaning conflict refers to anything in which there's a difference. We have a different outlook, we have a different perspective, and it's not necessarily that there's a disagreement over it. Rather, it's just an acknowledgement that, okay, we have to navigate this decision or this idea because we're coming at it differently.
So that's exactly the distinction. Every single relationship, the closer you are with the person, inherently you're going to have conflict. The difference between what you called a fight versus conflict is how much am I able to regulate my own stuff in those differences, in negotiating those differences. When my stuff gets triggered and my stuff becomes heightened and I get emotional about it, that's what turns into a fight. But underneath it, the conflict is real. And it's an invitation to dig deep within myself. And from that really authentic place, that's how we negotiate differences and conflict so that they don't turn into fights.
So, do you have a good example of a conflict, or is there something that you and I can discuss to demonstrate what a conflict looks like and what it means to confront that conflict and talk it out versus avoid, sit on it?
There are so many to choose from. I don't know where to start. I mean, actually, not no, yes. But again, I always say sometimes you look at couples and you're like, how did you guys end up together? You're so different. I always wonder what people say when they look at us. They're so similar, they're so different. I don't know. I see our similarities, but usually the
I think
deeper.
the people who know us more closely than others, they're probably asking, how did these two end up together?
Exactly. And the deeper you get into relationships, the more you notice where the differences lie. But let's use an example that I think highlights for us both our personality differences as well as how they manifest in day-to-day life. Let's go back to when we made Ayelet's bat mitzvah. Ayelet is now, thank God, 18, and her bat mitzvah was 2.5 weeks after Rachel was born. For me, the scale of overwhelm, if we take a scale of 1 to 10, I was probably on a 15. So much going on. Thank God, all positive stuff, but just a lot of stimulation, a lot of action. And for me, I was itching for any moments of quiet, alone time, recoup, regroup. And that is what I needed more than anything. And you want me to speak for you, or you want to speak for yourself in terms of what I think you needed in that celebration?
What do you want me to do?
Exactly.
Yeah, for me, I was just naturally going into the bat mitzvah like, this is going to be a bat mitzvah like we had always planned. And the fact that we had a new baby was exciting and tiring. But in terms of the overall look of the simcha and how we were going to do things, I was just going on the assumption that all the family would be there, we would celebrate with the community, and we would just do everything as normal.
So on the surface level, we could look at our disagreements as, are we having Sudah Shlishit in the home? Are we having it in shul? Are we not having it at all? Are we hosting more? Are we hosting less? Are we doing a late Friday night dinner? Are we doing an early Friday night dinner? We could look at those differences on a planning surface level. But beneath the surface, there was so much individual need, which I keep referring to as autonomy, because this really, when you start to break it down individually, you start to separate between, I prefer things a certain way, I would like things a certain way, and then there's, I really need things a certain way. And when you're honest about that last category of I need things a certain way, that's when you know you're really touching your sense of self, your sense of autonomy. This is something that I need. And so for me, I really needed pockets of quiet, pockets on my own, pockets to regroup and collect myself because of all the stimulation. And I think for you, what you really needed was a celebratory environment, people, family, community, and those are in conflict. Now, let's also remember, I'm postpartum, really hormonal. I don't think I was at my best having these conversations. I will say that on air. But those initial conversations were probably more argumentative. And they probably looked more, I don't want to have this, I don't want to do that, I don't want to be asked to, et cetera, et cetera. If we could talk from a place of vulnerable need, I need to be able to replenish. I know my body's limitations and my emotional limitations. And at the same time, I really hear what your needs are. And I want you to be able to have those needs met. And maybe we can negotiate how we're going to set up this bat mitzvah from that place, from each of us really hearing the need of the other, understanding where that need comes from, and then each of us being willing to say, you know what, I can make a concession on this one. I can stretch myself on that one. That one, I don't think I can. Is that something you can live with? That's what a good conversation of difference can look like.
I think what happens in situations like these, and I'm sure this happened for us, is that when you haven't had the conversation about the conflict, about where each of you are different, so the conflicts come up on their own, right? The issues present themselves, and then you're triggered by it. And you address the particular issue, and it creates some friction and perhaps some resentment. And what happens is an unproductive conversation, which is very common in relationships. And then what you're describing in terms of how to gain from that conflict is to be able to deepen the conversation beyond that surface level exchange of like, why are you doing this? Or that really bothers me, or something like that. That's really what you're talking about.
Yeah. And again, it starts with self awareness. I think you talked about that in the video that we made in memory of our daughter, Hannah, where we had such lower levels of self awareness, and that was reflected in the conflicts that we had to navigate. So it starts with self awareness, where I am, what my trigger points are really about, and then being able to really understand yours separate from mine, and then navigate, discuss it from that place. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, not to broaden this topic too much, but conflict and how we learn from conflict is the essence of how Torah Shebaal Peh, how the oral Torah has been transmitted to us in the context of the Gemara, and how the Gemara presents its ideas, and how the Gemara analyzes topics is through conflict, is through machlokas, but the healthy kind of machlokas. And the way serious students of Gemara learn Gemara is b'chavrusa, and debating and discussing and arguing over the sugya. And that's, I think it's a little bit more of a broader philosophical concept, but I think it's certainly relevant.
I think it's absolutely relevant, because when you're debating a topic, it forces you to sharpen and to fine tune your own ideas and thoughts. When it comes to conflict between people in a relationship, it forces you not to sharpen your ideas so you can come back with a better argument. That would be actually the opposite of what we're looking for, but it forces you to look deeper inside to try to understand why I am pushing so hard on this issue, why I am unwilling to concede. That's a question I have to ask myself and dig really, really deep. And I'll never be pushed to do that if I'm not being challenged by someone else. It's only the challenge that pushes me to look that deep inside of myself.
So when I was looking at this pasuk, I had an observation that when you look at the story and you look how Yaakov crosses his hand, Yosef tries to correct him, we hear nothing from Menashe and Ephraim. They are silent in this story. We don't see whether they were fine with this, or whether this caused friction, whether it was difficult or not. And in light of all of the brotherly conflicts that characterize Sefer Bereshis, I think you can say that Menashe and Ephraim were okay with this, that they were not affected by it. And perhaps the reason why is hinted at in an unusual word that the pasuk uses for Yaakov's actions. When it says that Yaakov crossed his arms, it says sikel es yadav. Now the word sikel essentially means, like from the word seichel, it means that what he did was actually quite intentional and mindful, right? Sikel is really the word that speaks to a person's mindset, not just their intentionality, but that they thought this through.
Used to seichel.
Right, use the seichel. And perhaps what that's implying is that the reason why there was no conflict is because Yaakov could see the nature of Ephraim and the nature of Menashe. Perhaps Yaakov could see their real personalities. He was able to see them for who they were and recognized that this was right for Ephraim and this was right for Menashe. That Yaakov did not assume that because Menashe is older, that he's just the person who needs to be the recipient of the right hand. He's the one who needs to be in charge. Maybe that wasn't his personality at all. And maybe Ephraim, even though he was younger, was the kind of personality who was looking for leadership. So maybe the reason why Menashe and Ephraim are so accepting of this is because it really went with their personalities, that Yaakov really understood them. And I think it's an important lesson. Your family on their terms, not on our prior assumptions that, okay, he's the Bechor, he's older, and so therefore he must be like this. And Menashe is the younger, and therefore he must be like this. What Yaakov demonstrates is how to understand someone the way they understand themselves. And it's a profound chesed, it's a profound kindness to not impose our understanding on someone and allow them to speak for themselves and to be themselves.
It's such an important point. And I think it's fair to say that their acquiescence really comes from a place of buy-in.
Yeah. And to tie it back to what you were saying, one of the things that we hope to achieve through conversation that develops from points of conflict is to understand the person in relationship with us on their own terms. And when a person knows that they're being understood on their own terms, that creates the kind of safety and security and warmth and closeness that just makes, further differences or conflicts that much more smoothly addressed.
It's being able to not say to Menashe, you're going to be great. You're the firstborn. You're destined for this. You're going to love it. You'll see. It's going to work out. But to really see him exactly as you said, on his terms, and to be able to bless him accordingly. And for Ephraim, exactly the same.
There are times when I see myself talking with one of our girls and wanting them to do something which I really think they're going to enjoy. And because I know them so well. And I'm kind of nudging, kind of pushing, oh, you should try this, or you should go to this place. You're going to enjoy it. And they're really resistant, but we think it's good for them. It's hard to know when to push, when not to push. But in some situations, part of it is recognizing that as much as we understand our kids, as much as we understand our loved ones, there are times when our understanding only goes so far, and we have to give them a little bit of space to say, you know what, this is not for me, even though we're convinced that this is perfect for them.
Yeah, and there's another just great area of difference between us, because I find myself saying, guys, don't try that. You're not going to like it.
Yeah.
Don't do that. You should be more careful. You should hesitate, right? And again, no, they're excited to try it. They have much stronger stomachs than I do. So give them that space to be themselves.
Yeah.
Shame of Osai, the shame of